Hi, and welcome to CFO Insight TV. The Eurozone crisis is moving into its fifth year, and there's still no end in sight. The willingness of investors to lend money to the periphery is crucial to resolving the crisis, and so I'm particularly happy to welcome the Chief Economist of Investment Manager Invesco to the studio, John Greenwood. John, thanks for coming in.
Morning.
How close are we to the Eurozone actually breaking up?
I don't think we're near a complete breakup, but I think the exit of one or more countries could well happen within the next 2 or 3 years. A problem which is starting to occur is bank runs. We're seeing deposit flights from banks in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal, and in Ireland. And if those bank runs become more serious, then again, bank runs could take over or could force an accelerated solution from the politicians. So although the politicians want to hold it together, things could run out of control as far as they're concerned.
Now, short of complete breakup, how likely is it for one single country, such as Greece, for example, to step out of the Eurozone, and what would be the economic implications of that for the Eurozone and the UK?
I think it's very likely that Greece and probably Portugal will step out. In both cases, the economies are in severe recession. That means that the debt to GDP ratios are deteriorating. So even if they don't issue any more debt, the GDP, which is the denominator in that ratio, is shrinking. That means that the debt ratio is continuously rising. That's a real debt crisis. If either of those two countries left, that would induce contagion fears, a fear of further departures from the Eurozone across the other peripheral economies, and that would require prompt measures by the center, by the core economies, to prevent complete breakup.
This sort of pressures you've been talking about on the political leaders, they have been on them for a while now, and yet EU leaders are moving from summit to summit, and each time they make an agreement, and markets are not mollified by the results. Do you see any major progress that has come out of those meetings in past months?
Not really. The recent steps towards a banking union are what I would call baby steps. The fundamental flaw in the architecture of the European Monetary Union is that it is not also a fiscal union. You need the two to be matched. And at the moment what we have is a number of member states whose finances are so overstretched that people who maintain deposits at the banks in the various periphery countries do not have the ultimate protection of the state in each case, because the state is already overburdened. Now, the way that problem is solved in the United States, or indeed in the United Kingdom, where we have a monetary union between the UK, between England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, is by having a common fiscal union. That at the moment is not on the cards in the Eurozone, and therefore the crisis is likely to continue to stumble on until we get a more comprehensive resolution.
In your recent quarterly outlook, you highlight the importance of core economies such as Germany for the chances of recovery of the Eurozone as a whole. But recently we've seen some signs of weakness in Germany as well. How high do you rate the chances of that economy falling into recession?
Well, I think you have two offsetting forces in Germany. On the one hand, sales to countries like Greece, Portugal, Spain have been falling. So the exports of Germany to those areas, which were very important, have been weakening, and that's undermining the GDP, or the export, part of the export component of GDP. On the other hand, the euro itself has been weakening. And the weakening of the euro is going to enable German firms to be more competitive. So it's not very clear that Germany will suffer an overall downturn, but What is clear is that the Eurozone as a whole is not seeing any kind of recovery. And personally, I don't see any basis for recovery until the monetary system and the fiscal system are properly restructured.
And what's your outlook for the UK?
The UK will also be damaged by what is going on in the Eurozone. Nearly 40% of British exports go to the Eurozone, and many of the other economies that we export to are also suffering from subpar growth. These are all a consequence of the long crisis since 2007, 2008. In order to get a revival in the UK, we're going to have to see a revival in other economies. I don't see the possibility of an independent recovery in the UK separate from a recovery in Europe or the rest of the world. So for the time being, subpar growth in the UK, probably only at best 1% growth in the economy as a whole is all we can hope for.
To wrap up the interview, I'd now like to ask you 3 questions, and I would like to ask you to answer them only with a yes and no if possible.
Sure.
Will more European countries need a bailout this year?
Yes.
Will Europe return to solid growth within the next 2 years?
No.
Will there still be a European Monetary Union 1 year from now?
Yes.
Thank you, John, for joining us here on CFO Inside TV. And thank you for watching.